Hello and welcome to Ars Electronica Home Delivery, our daily program to keep our content available for all of you, not only here in Linz, but actually globally. And today we have another very interesting international topic. It's again some information about this year's Prix Ars Electronica. I have to tell you already, this is not an announcement of the prize winners. So the projects that we are going to present are only examples of projects that were very interesting for the juries, that were discussed, that we found interesting afterwards, but this doesn't say anything about who got the prize. You have to wait until June 15th for this. With me today is Emiko Ogawa-san and Manuela Navo. Emiko is the head of Prix Ars Electronica, all the operations, and Manu, who runs our international exhibitions, was in particular responsible this year to work with the jury and prepare the jury meetings. The topic is digital communities, a category that we started already in 2004, and that was specifically introduced to look at the social impact of digital media. And of course, to look at the way how artists contribute to new forms of social interaction, communication, to new forms of activism in the internet, with new digital media. And I think it was again a very, very interesting year, 2020, of course, because of Corona. We had to completely change our jury proceedings, and I would like to ask Emiko-san to tell us a little bit who were in the jury. Yes. And how did the proceedings work?
Yes, thank you, Gerfried. So now you see the 5 jury members of digital communities this year. So when we invite them, that we didn't expect this situation, but that we make it happen. The first of all, from the left side upper part, Dietmar Offenhuber, he is the Northeastern University professor and also the researcher of the urban planning. So the middle is the Chiaki Hayashi. She is an entrepreneur, the Japanese entrepreneur, and also the co-founder of Loftwork, and working in the creative industry, as well as also working for the Creative Commons as well. So the third person is Irini Papadimitriou. She is the creative director of the Future Everything, and also she is the curator for the artistic project, which make the discussion and think about the new possibility, what's going on with these technologies. Here is Thomas Gegenhuber, who is the professor in the Leuphana University in Lüneburg, and also he is the researcher of open innovation, open governance. And the last not least is Fala Salka. She is the activist and also the founder of the anti-racism movement, and she got the Award of Distinction 2018 in the Prix Ars Electronica Digital Communities. They are the 5 jury members to discuss about this year's jury meeting and the core of the digital communities. Mm-hmm. Now I would like to introduce some comment from the jury that would show the video, that this is the real situation that we have in the jury meeting in May 1st to 3rd.
Strange to not be in the room with everyone and obviously not having the chocolate was like a big downside. If there was a way to send virtual chocolate, would be great, maybe. But I'm really glad that I'm really glad that you you made this happen. In a different way, and it's great. And I still kind of really enjoyed the conversations, and especially like for this year, for being part of the digital community, I thought it was a really rewarding to be, to talk about what the idea of communities in the current situation that we live. So yeah, it was great.
Yeah, thank you. So. She mentioned about chocolate because that in the jury room, normally we prepare a lot of chocolate because they normally consume a lot of brain power and chocolate is needed. And she knows about it. Yes, as Irini mentioned that this situation really kind of forced the jury member to think about the core of the digital community, what make people happen that the community itself, what is the digital community in these days. So it was, I think, the big effect for the decision making of the jury meeting.
Great. So the deliberations were, of course, totally different than usual. Usually the people are all together for 3.5 days here in Linz, working always in the same room. And of course, this year we also had quite a big span in terms of time from the United States to Japan.
Exactly.
But I think it worked out quite well.
Yes, I think, and also that I really thank all the jury members that they worked really hard, not only during the jury meeting, but in advance, because of these time differences, we only allow or possible to work every day in maximum 3 hours. So before that they really had spent a lot of time to check through all the project very carefully, and then we sit together and spend the time for this telecommunication, more only focusing on the discussion. Mm-hmm. They said that it was very effective, but in the meantime, we really miss this.
Chocolate.
Yeah, chocolate as well.
Manuela, you were working with the jury all the time, and actually since many years you are taking care of the digital communities category, preparing it, working with the jury, making sure they deliver their statements and all this. So what were your observations and findings, not so much about the jury, but actually the submissions and the projects that were discussed?
Yeah, it's actually, I think this year was very special, not because of the pandemic situation, but also because we changed the call. And we were in particular also really focusing on artistic community projects and artistic works, because since I think 2004 we had the first digital community jury deliberations, and we started with the first call. Of course there were a lot of discussion, what is a digital community? And this is not the discussion anymore. I mean, especially that we meet online as a jury community. So this was not the discussion anymore. It was more about, okay, what is actually the impact that a community has on the civil society? What is the impact of the tools that are developed by a community? And I think this was something that was really totally different to the years before. And for example, what is always very interesting is when there are projects submitted that could even go from one category to another, because it's a sound art project. So it could be a sound project. It was not this year because it was not the case that we called for it, but especially also between interactive art and community, as we are also now starting to call for artistic projects. But the nice thing was all this discussion about the impact of the tools that we actually have to develop to run a community. And the question is also not so much how long the community was actually existing before and how sustainable this community is. I think the most important thing was that the jury figured out how important it is that the community is coming together now, at this certain time, because now we need the community to face the social or political problem. And I think there was a change in the mind of the jury, as well as a change also in the way that we were calling for projects. And I think it's a good time also to mention that digital communities is the only category where we are asking for advisors. On the one hand, advisors, I mean, next to START's projects, but for the other Prix Ars Electronica digital community is the only one, because advisors have a very important function for us. On the one hand, they give us their knowledge to tell us actually which kind of projects are in the moment out there that we need as a best practice example in the field of digital communities. And on the other hand, they are multipliers. So they extend, or they actually forward the call then to their to their peers and to their communities again, and which is extremely important. And especially this year, there was not a discussion about this. It was not a discussion about the sustainability of a community or how long it's running. It's more about what is the community doing, why, and what is it developing, and how could it be a best practice example for others.
Mm-hmm. Best practice is the keyword. You both have prepared several examples, and I think Emiko is the first one to present one of the examples. And again, this doesn't mean it's a prize-winning project.
Yes. So I would like to introduce one project called VR versus Virus Project Hackathon project. It's not because of this coronavirus pandemic situation, but as just Manuela mentioned, that because this is the kind of rapid type community that the participants shared the common goal and creates the community, and then after 3 days hackathon, they are gone. So the community will be dissolved. Of course, they are still working on it. And also the interesting is that this hackathon project is held in March 20th for 3 days, which is exactly the moment of pandemic and confusion, especially in Europe area. So that it's amazing that more than almost 30,000 people are gathering for this hackathon and not making the very cool idea, but a lot of small, nice ideas. They said, according to the website, 1,500 very nice ideas are gathered, and now 130 projects are still going to implement it. So this is exactly, and of course, not for sustainability for lone community itself, but this is the needed community, for example, now. So in this point of view, I see this, and also this project I really would like to share with you that as an interesting example.
Great. Manuela.
Yeah, the example that I selected is an example from Lebanon. It's also based on quite current issues. It's about the protests and that were going on in October, like it's called also now October Revolution. 2019, which was then dismantled in January. And in Lebanon, actually, the people there suffer a lot on the financial situation in Lebanon, but they also suffer actually on the distribution of food. And so this group of people, it's actually 3 people. And one of the person that is in the back, and I very much like to focus always on persons when we speak about communities, because for me personally, it's very important to actually deconstruct a little bit these romantic images of communities that always a lot of people are working together. It needs a lot of effort, and sometimes it's only a few people that really run communities. And this is why I want to introduce to you Murat Ayach. He is actually a mechanical engineer, specialized in aerodynamics, and he is creating together with an architect, or he created together with an architect and with a chef from cuisine, actually the Hapak movement. And what is he doing? They were based on the conflicts that took place actually in Tripoli on the streets, and on Al-Noon Square they were giving away seeds to the people in order to plant it, in order to grow plants, in order to bring food to the people, to give work to refugees, to give work especially to female refugees, and also to grow then plants in order to also grow seeds again for the next actually for the next season. And I think this is something that is an extremely a very good example how a community is actually working, because now the community is 200 people, it's different cities, it's Hapak movement. Even the name Hapak means in English basil, so basilicum in German. And this is what they care. They care about plants, they care about seeds, and they care about local distribution. They care about sharing of knowledge when it comes to agriculture. And I think this is an extremely good example how a political situation is actually giving seed to a community that is growing.
Mm-hmm. So the next my selection is so-called like female power community type project. Now you see two projects. The first, this part is the School of Machines, Making and Make Believe. So these are the school project, and especially in 2014, and led by is the male-dominant field, of course. But it's not only for the female. It's not for the female empowerment, but just led by the female artist and make the and stimulate the curiosity of all people. So participants learn in this area art, technology, and also the design and human communication. So that the project it's not, of course, made by government or state or something. It's more really bottom-up and type project in the school, and people are coming here because it's interesting. It's not recommended by somebody, but it really stimulates people's curiosity of the machine and also the circumstances around this interaction in the artistic way. So this is, I think, very interesting project of the community, new type of the community. And the other female power project is this one. So it's called Algorithmic Justice League. So this is the it itself is the initiative and the cultural movement toward equitable and accountable AI, because it's not implemented yet. And the core researcher, Joy Bolawini, as known as Poet of Court, who is she, and she found the algorithm bias in AI throughout her research. It means that the AI doesn't recognize properly the face of darker-skinned female, and she found that it's because of the lack of the data set. Always the data set was normally utilized the lighter-skinned subjects. So because of this lack of source, the face recognition system's data set is not properly working. And it's really crucial problem, actually. So for example, in her case, that she wanted to communicate with social robot, and the robot is working to the all the other people, but it was not working too hard. The robot doesn't recognize her face. It's crucial. Why? So I'm the human being, and all the technology, as it says, should serve all of us, not just the privileged few. So I think normally that we even didn't recognize this kind of the bias, but as a researcher, as a female, and it's not only for like female people or something, but for the better society, the real equivalent words in society. So these are the activities for to tell this truth and also to share with people and create the new better AI system for the better world. So this is also, I think, a very interesting project and examples, not the female power only for the female, but for the world and society.
A very important point. We have one more project, I think.
Yeah, and I think this is exactly, so this searching for diversity and searching not only actually in the community where you are around, or especially in Europe or the Western countries, but more having a look what's actually taking place in other places in the world. And I think this is why it's so important that we have our advisors. And I think we give a big, big thank you to our advisors who hopefully see us also. And because they come from every part in the world. And I think this is really interesting for us to have submitted projects from Africa, to have projects from Mexico, from Indonesia. And just quickly to introduce you, what you see here next to me is actually a project by an artist and a researcher. And it's Luz Maria Sanchez, a quite very well-known artist and researcher that was making an archive on sounds, and she's also doing sound installations. But what she's actually doing, she's working with local communities. For example, the rastreadoras, which are women who are fighting against crime in Mexico. And whenever a crime is uploaded by, or when somebody, for example, is observing something, is uploading it to YouTube, whatsoever, she's taking it, she's including it in her archive. And what you can do is you can go to her website, and the project is called, like it's mentioned here, the This Unnecessary Force. And you can go there, you can go to the red spots on this gun, and you can actually hear what's going on. You hear how people feel about the anxious, about this terrible situation they're facing, about the guns that you hear in the back. And I think it's really an extremely well done archive that you can also actually see a sound installation, as she's also presenting it in her exhibitions. On the other hand, for example, this is a project, the Ghana think tank is developing the first world. Yes, Ghana think tank is developing the first world. Because what is this project doing? It's actually going to the first world and asking people like us, okay, what are your problems? And with the problems, they go to the third world and they ask people in the third world about the problems from people from the first world, and then they give the answers back. And it's a wonderful exchange project, and I cannot give all the think tanks worldwide, or cannot really recall them in the moment, but we have, also they have actually also think tanks in prisons, they have think tanks in Indonesia, in hack labs, in bicycle clubs, whatsoever. So they have a very good network of think tanks already, and started with the Ghana think tank, who started to develop the first world. Another African project, just to mention it here, is listening to Pungwe, which is also a sound project, which has a lot to do with African music, but also who is raising questions about spiritualism versus functionalism, and also bringing in different cultural heritage into discussion, because what are they doing? They go to public places, they do the music there, they do discussions there, they speak about how this music is actually preserved, how much spiritualism has actually a value or is valued actually in other countries that are then listening this music again. So there's a lot of discussion involved, also led by artists and scientists. And the last project I would like to show and just mention here is one from Indonesia, which is the Pulang Pergi. I hope I can spell it in the right way and name it in the right way. It's a platform project about, for Indonesians, but for Indonesians, migrants, labor migrants that have to go to Singapore and so on for half a year and then come back. And this is a platform where they can actually exchange what happened to them, where are the safer places, where are the safe routes to go, and so on. So a very important platform when it comes to the topic of Indonesians who have to migrate for labor to other countries in order to bring back money for their families.
Great. More of this, of course, you can experience at this year's Ars Electronica Festival. Yes, it's taking place. September 9th, Wednesday is the beginning until Sunday. It will be a wonderful mixture between real space and virtual space activities and events. And on June 15th, so pretty soon, we will have the press announcement. Then you will see who are the prize winners in the categories. If there are any questions, of course, we are happy to answer them.
Of course, yes. Yes, there are questions here. One is, over the years of the digital communities, did you see the promise of the net, everything will become digital? Did you see that this actually came through, or did it was the opposite?
The promise of the net, I think that's an interesting way how to describe it. I think the importance of the net as we have it, I think it's very well described via different projects, also very critically. I can remember, for example, it was 4 years ago when we had the P2P Foundation, very as a very important platform to develop the net, to like bring into our consciousness like what it actually needs, to work with the net, with the internet still in a positive way. Of course, there's also a lot of critique, how the internet it looks now, and also which kind of projects are involving because of Google and Amazon and blah. But on the other hand, I think the diversity of the projects that we see since 2004, and me personally, it brings me always back to the situation. Actually, if somebody would start to research on all the projects and how also the projects developed and how the web developed within these years, I think this would be a very, very interesting approach.
Yeah, and also like the as I introduced like the Willis Hackathon project, like this rapid type of the community is really submitted a lot, and it means that not only that to develop one very core achievement, but also that when this internet is needed, then this is the community again happens and make it happen. So I think this is also one of the phenomena that we see, especially in this year. Yes.
Thank you. There's a second question pending. How much did the impact that the project had to the real world influence the jury? Made it any impact? How many participants or all those kind of things were involved?
Well, it's actually it's for always very difficult to classify like this. That okay, this is a project on participation. It's like a blah blah amount or blah blah. We cannot compare simply. So and always we have to guess that what is the impact in this community and also around the people. So it's very, very difficult to explain, but jury really try to carefully think about the impact in this community, in this cultural field, the real impact. It's not the mean the impact for like the global community, but I think that also the second important point is that how this impact or the project that people should share or should also try immediately. So this is also another type of the impact.
Mm-hmm. What comes to my mind is actually the Fukushima project, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's actually a good example where it was just a clever combination of existing platforms. So exactly. It's not about that every community is doing something new, building something new, developing something new, but this was a wonderful example that actually clever people are actually combining things that are already existing to something that is totally new and to something that is needed in the moment by masses of people, all of them who are actually around in this area. And I think this is some of the well, that we can say, okay, this is an impact that is somehow that you can measure. But on the other hand, it's totally difficult to measure which kind of impact which project has because of an award or something.
Yes, thanks. That's all from the community at the moment. I think they look all forward to the 15th.
Yes, definitely. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.